Good morning, everybody. It's Friday, February 23rd, and this is the AgYield War Room. I'm Dan Dempsey, and I'll be moderating today's session. As always, if you've got any questions or comments, please feel free to drop us a line in the chat area, and we'll get to them during the show. Quickly here, overnight markets had March corn up a half at 406 and a half. March soybeans were down five and a half at 1142 and a quarter, and March Chicago wheat was up 5 and a quarter at 588 and a half. Weekly export sales were released this morning, a day later than usual, given Monday's holiday. Corn was pretty solid, in line with estimates. 820,400 for 23, an additional 177,700 for 24. Soybeans were really bad. 55,900 reported sales. We're going to talk a little bit about that here in a minute. They were looking for, between 300 and 800. So strong cancellations from unknown. And like I said, we'll visit about that here shortly. Wheat, lower end of the range, 233,500 for 23. And a small amount for 24, just under 50,000 for 24. And meal came in at 202,000. They were looking for between 150 and 400 on the meal sales. We've got 15 settlements done for our spring federal crop insurance price, 15 to 20 settlements. Corn is currently sitting at 467 and 3/4, and beans are now 1162 and a quarter. Good morning, guys. Thank goodness it's Friday. We'll put a bow on this week here. I guess as I alluded to in the start here, this morning's export sales report, 591,000 cancellations from unknown. What's your thoughts to kick us off here, Dust?
Well, the market doesn't like it. Obviously, it started dropping right after that report came out. So we had 15 minutes of trade for the overnight markets to finish up here before the pause. And yeah, 591,000. We already had watched the USDA raise their WASD estimates to closer to like a 7.5% stocks to use ratio. This is the type of signal. I mean, this alone is 21 million bushels. That would put us up above 8% stocks to use for beans. And unknown destinations, primarily we expect that probably be mostly China, right? Especially when it's all in one chunk that large for cancellation. China did show up on there for purchasing, from a switch from unknown. So it was a little bit weird to see. Brazil didn't have the worst year, right? They had obviously dryness to start, but we are off trend is what CONAB's projecting, the USDA is projecting, but it's still a very, very large area of plantings. So 150 million metric tons, or let's say even if it's 145, it's still a very large number, and that's probably why we're seeing these cancellations.
That's very good. Today being option expiration, we've talked about it for really like the last 3 war room sessions, just this really big open interest at roughly a 450 type of strike price for corn. We're trading 406 and a half here this morning after yesterday's break. I read this morning that some are estimating funds now to be short, in the ballpark of 320 plus thousand contracts. So certainly open interest in seeing how this option plays out today, expiration plays out today, is going to be really indicative of our next couple of weeks. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree with that. We have open interest, dropping just slightly for the options, but by many accounts, it's really hasn't dropped off like you'd expect for those in the money puts. We saw a slightly higher overnight session, but we've seen weakness on the spreads, especially old crop to new crop. So it's not your typical, time frame where everyone that bought puts, they get into the money and all of a sudden they might be assigned a futures contract where they immediately sell out of the put because they're afraid of being short the corn. I do think the winds have changed a little bit from growers and market participants being fairly bullish, coming out of a bull year, a couple of bull years in a row, to now I think a lot of people are throwing in the towel and getting bearish at this moment. And maybe it is that there's a large portion of those put holders that are ready to take futures, short futures. And that could explain why the spreads have remained weak and why the market hasn't seen any sort of real bounce even though it is a fairly large, disproportionately large open put interest going into option expiration. Now, end of the day, still could be one more day of this. It's the final day they have to make the decision, those long put holders. So you could see maybe some strength in the close. But so far, the indications have all been pretty negative.
Yeah. Yeah. So they'll have, people getting exercised or deciding if they want to take them and whatnot. It'll happen later this afternoon into tomorrow morning. Is that correct?
Yeah. And just to put it in perspective, your open interest for March corn has dropped off to 231,000 as of yesterday. And your open interest on these put options is down to, in the money put options, is 93,000 contracts with an average strike of 446. Okay. So you're at a pretty big percentage of open interest going into option expiration.
Well, yeah, and Dustin, to that point, right? If you're a grower with a put option in the money, and even if you don't want to take that futures position, right, you can cover that put and you can go sell your cash corn, which is going to be an offsetting position, right? So I bet there's a lot of that going on as well, even if they're not necessarily willing to take that risk of a short futures position.
Yeah, like our book, for example, we have a lot of people that fell into the money on long March puts and then delivered against them doing exchanges, right? Yeah. Which those positions will offset and it will close out that position. So, yeah, I can see that happening too.
I would,
Ben, thoughts from the East? Yeah, there you go.
I would just concur that I think that there's a lot of throwing in the towel going on. Sorry, I'm trying to stay out of the light there. I had lunch. I had lunch yesterday with an account rep from a major commercial who we have a relationship with, and he received 4 phone calls during lunch of people throwing in the towel. Just price my basis, price my basis, price my basis. And while that's on a micro level, I think it's happening all over the country, and we've got to get through this options expiration. And we've got to finish up into next week. Some commercials start forcing people out by Monday, Tuesday. With some of the last ones allowing them, they'll stay till Thursday. So I think on the calendar, this is where the rubber hits the road, and it'll be interesting to see what happens over the horizon once that's happened. A lot of rent payments due. People needing to generate cash have had to move a lot of corn here in the first quarter. So. Hopefully we find a little bit of traction, at least stop the bleed once that period is over.
Yeah, it's real good points here. We touched on it a little bit yesterday, but wheat continues to be, one of the stronger commodities on the board. It traded lower yesterday, but I mean, a pretty good close for how it traded for most of the day. Continue to see a little inverse in the forward spreads there, March to May and whatnot. But is this highlighting, and Dustin, I think you've talked a little bit about it, but just what can potentially happen? You get a market that's uber short and, based on the relationship with some other commodities that they want to cover, they're going to cover.
Yeah, there is obviously still a very large inverse correlation between wheat and beans. And it really started around the time that you saw the funds start to take on the short bean and bean product position a couple months ago. They were very, very short wheat going into end of November, and then they covered. Is I think over $1 rally there. So I think we're still playing that position out a bit, where they've been getting shorter beans and shorter the products. We had a very bearish headline there on export sales this morning for beans, and then immediately we're seeing wheat up again to a larger degree. So I think that's part of the pair trade between those two.
Yeah, I also think adding for the wheat short, that was built at much higher levels, and it doesn't always correlate the volume that trades in the soft red wheat contract to the size of the contract, and it's money looking for ways to generate returns, and with wide spreads and potential of ESR, it has a really hefty return. And now that it's gone the other way, they're not going to collect that toll on wheat of carrying. But they also, if they can make it to July, they're probably going to be safe, and they've made a lot of money on it. It'll be interesting to see how, I think wheat is the one, when we get into delivery, how that's going to act on those spreads. Wheat has some vulnerability at certain times of the year, and I think that when you get into March 1, I think it's one of those vulnerable periods. So they're going to have to decide if they want to stay in wheat or maybe take and deploy their resources somewhere else. We are shipping wheat sales to China, and on the same note, Russia's really heavy on the pricing, so we're kind of priced out of the market, but there is a mechanical imbalance in wheat at the moment.
It was interesting. You just brought up Russia here, Ben, and I was reading this morning. We are the United States is going to be in the process today of levying another 500 sanctions on Russia here today. So as you know, we've touched on geopolitics and things like that. It's another shot from us to their country. I think a lot of this is in response to not only Ukraine, but some of this nuclear discussions and space discussions and things like that. So be interesting to see how all of that plays out as we go through the next couple of days and what Putin's overall response is.
Yeah, well, and I think that creates also an interesting conversation. While we've seen headlines from there really be muted over the last year and a half, there's rumblings that there's going to be a big spring offensive by Russia. Some of the headlines are discussing that. And going back to something that we brought up probably a month ago, that it might give a better idea of what the intentions are overall from Russia and the Putin regime. So you can't trust anyone there. They don't think and operate the way we do. Not that we're perfect, but we've kind of been in what feels like a standoff there for a while. The weather's starting to turn, which I think creates a little bit more of a cloud over that situation.
Yeah, that's a good point. Got a couple minutes here. Ryland, I know we're going to have cattle on feed here at 2:00 Central today. We've talked about some of the expectations within the estimates, but what do you see in that complex as we wrap the week?
Well, a little bit of a reversal yesterday in the price action. We made new highs in both places, live cattle and feeders. And then just completely fell backwards towards the end of the day. So that's that kind of cautionary trade that we kind of would expect going into this report, where you see the longs start to cut loose a little bit, just in case there's some kind of negative surprise. I mean, the trade is leaning bullish going into this report. You got the funds that have been nonstop buyers. And as of right now, there really hasn't been much cash trade to speak of. A little bit of 182 trade in the South, but that's about it. So all eyes are going to be on cash after the report and see really what direction we're going into next week outside of what the report numbers say. So I think one of the more interesting aspects of yesterday's trade was the market really dipped lower after the weight data came out, and we saw about 3 pound increase in dressed steer weights. So generally that the market will typically see that kind of weight increase right now as negative, and it definitely reacted that way. Maybe that was the catalyst for yesterday.
Was that improved weather, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The weather has a lot to do with that, and like seasonally we're well above normal temperatures. We're pretty dry in feeding country, so the weather's really conducive to weight gain right now. So I think that's just something that the market's going to be tackling with, and definitely a headwind for maybe another leg higher here.
Will they feed more then if the weather's nice? Like, will they eat more?
Yeah, that's the idea. They get hungrier. It's just better conditions. There's nothing adverse to really stop that weight gain or reduce that weight gain. So they'll eat more and they'll gain more weight quickly.
I do too.
Likewise.
I mean, I've been putting it back. So
no, good stuff, Ryan. I know you'll have your comments here this afternoon, and I'm sure we'll touch on it Monday morning as well.
Absolutely.
After we see the report. So appreciate that.
Yep, no problem.
To put a bow on the week, it is of course Friday Fun Fact Friday, and we've got a bonus edition. There is a rumor that Ben Wigginton's birthday is today. So happy birthday to our buddy in the East.
Happy birthday, man. Happy
doesn't
birthday.
look a day over 40. So he's looking great. But I have a unique fun fact. So most But Ben happens to have direct lineage in his family to one Elvis Presley. The hair gives it away for me, but he has direct lineage, and there's a story that I like to tell, and it was about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 8 now. We were at a bankers conference in Milwaukee, and we were on our way to giving a presentation. And Ben he's a past athlete and a coach, and he gets himself fired up, and it's awesome, right? So Ben decides he's going to turn on some Elvis Presley walk-in music for us as we go down an escalator. Now, mind you, there's 25 or 30 bankers on this escalator, and everybody's like, what are these guys doing? And Ben's jamming out to Elvis Presley. And as we walk in, we're like, okay, we can probably cut the jams. He's a little technologically not advanced, if you will, and he can't figure out how to turn the music off his phone. And so we ended up having walk-in music to our full presentation of Elvis Presley, and I will never forget it. And I still I laugh every time I think about it. So anyway, happy birthday, buddy.
Yeah, happy birthday, man.
Happy birthday, Ben.
And I'll yield the floor over to the true Fun Fact Friday, Brian.
Oh, here we go, Brian.
Yeah, here we go.
Oh,
Yeah, no, it's a very quick one. You know, watching these markets, you feel like you want to bang your head against the wall. And actually, it's proven that if you bang your head against the wall for an hour, you burn 150 calories. But I would say
Silver lining.
yeah, silver lining, right? But I would say you can walk the dog for 45 minutes and accomplish the same goal. So I would probably go for the second option.
It's a good call.
You do both. You do both every day, right?
Right. Yeah. Now you're at 300, and now you're looking really good.
Good way to lose weight.
It's a slow
All right,
news
well-
day this week, folks.
Yeah, I'm gonna go see a wall here. Hang on.
Yeah.
No, very good. We just came into the open here. We got March corn up a penny and a quarter, 407 1/4. March beans down 4 1/2, 11.43 1/4. And March Chicago wheat's up 5 1/4, 588 1/2. We are streaming live every day that the markets are open on X, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, 8:15 Central Standard Time. We will be back with you first thing Monday morning. Hope everybody has a great weekend, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.